Hey everyone, my name is Walter, and we're back here to read some stories from Reddit. As you probably know, we don't mean genuine nice guys when we say nice guys here. There are some implied quotation marks. These guys pride themselves on being nice. They like to give inappropriate gifts, they like to trick women into dates, because that's ever worked out well. And they tend to think they're more of a gentleman than other men, because other men just want sex, and obviously that's not what such a nice guy would be after. Chivalry died when females renamed it thirst, guys. Anyway, I hate long intros, so let's begin with more nicest guys from Reddit. Today we're going to be using a thread from Ask Reddit called What's Your Worst Nice Guy Story? Ended with a restraining order. This guy started messaging me on Facebook during a semester overseas, but I didn't think much of it since I thought he was a friend of my roommate's. Odd kid, mullet, neckbeard, leather trenchcoat down to his ankles, fedora, longboard, the whole shebang. Talked about weed non-stop. Would confess his feelings for me every few weeks, told him I was interested in someone else every time. He even started sending love poems in Spanish, which, hello, Google Translate is a thing. You're not being subtle. When I returned to campus, everything got 1,000 times worse. We lived in the same dorm, and he'd watch for me to enter and leave the building. Come from class, go outside to make a call, he'd always magically show up. Started giving long, unwanted bear hugs, and pushing random gifts under my door. Always returned them. Got increasingly angry with every rejection. Eventually he started coming over unannounced, later and later, midnight, 1, 2, 3 a.m. I explicitly told him I didn't want to see him or talk to him anymore. My roommates always told him I wasn't there. Finally, he watched me come in from class and started banging on my door, knowing that he knew I was there. He was a muscular guy. He could have gotten in eventually. By the time a friend arrived to help, about 15 to 20 minutes later, he'd gone. Temporarily. I took the time to sneak out to said friend's apartment. Got the restraining order. He was expelled for other reasons, drugs, later in the semester, though I'm sure this factored in too. So he leaves random gifts with the knowledge that she wouldn't accept them in person, but even when she returns them later anyway, he still keeps doing it. And if there's one thing I'm happy about, it's that I didn't write any love poems to random girls when I was younger. I'd sure hate to have to read those to you. Also, look at this in the comments. My college didn't kick out a guy in my program who was charged with and pled guilty to sexual assault on campus, but they kicked out a guy in my dorm freshman year because he had a photo of himself holding a red Solo cup on Facebook. Implied underage drinking. Remind me not to go to that college, sounds boring as shit. Guy had an honest-to-God tantrum that I wouldn't let him sleep over at my place on a second date. We had just met and had only kissed, and said second date was on a Tuesday, and then blamed my overwhelming Catholic guilt. No, for why I was denying him. Yeesh. Oh, come on, even Chris Chan knew you have to wait till the third date, am I right? Could this guy possibly sabotage himself any worse? I went out on a first date, wasn't feeling it, offered to pay the tab. He wouldn't let me. We parted ways. You think that would be the end, right? Oh no. He texted me later, telling me how I hurt him by accepting his kindness. The dinner he paid for, even though he didn't have to, and just sending him home alone. He was horny, and why don't you come over and work off that dinner, wink wink. I responded by telling him to lose my number. He responded back by calling me a money-hungry whore. I responded by sending my half of the dinner we shared to him via PayPal. How in God's name does anyone think they have a leg to stand on accusing someone of being a gold digger when they tried to split the bill? It's so far from being nice that I think they'd have better luck just outwardly being a dick. There was this guy in first year. I was pretty lonely and desperate for friends, so we hung out all the time, even though he was kind of odd. He started off being really kind to me, bringing me food and hanging out with me when I was super depressed. But it kind of escalated. He'd be at my apartment all the time, uninvited, force his way in, or corner me in public, even when I obviously wanted to be alone. I was polite, but the guy wasn't picking up on it. The final straw was me mentioning that I had been sexually assaulted. I'm pretty open about this, but it's sensitive, and him going, "That's okay, my parents always told me to buy used." After that, I started wearing a massive raincoat around campus so that he wouldn't see me or talk to me. Effing creep. Edit, I will follow up to this story by explaining that the only time I ran into him after this, pretty much, was as members of the same club. We barely talked until Valentine's Day, when he messaged me the following. "I know you have a boyfriend, but I am madly in love with you and want you to break it off with him for me." My parents always told me to buy used. It almost has to be a talent to come up with something that bad to say on the spot. This guy in my circle of friends had asked me out, and I had told him I wasn't interested. I knew he was carrying a torch, but never encouraged him in any way. Then my mother died and he went into some kind of romantic frenzy, always wanting to talk to me about it and saying he was there for me or whatever. It was completely disgusting. He obviously saw the death of the most important person in my life as an opportunity for him. I tried to discourage him, not even particularly gently, but he asked me out again and I was pissed off about it this time. He was incredibly hurt and was telling our other friends stuff like, I can't even be mad at her about it. My friends were always coming to me with some dumb, terrible shit he was saying about me. The worst was he knew I was pissed, and despite everyone telling him to leave me the fuck alone, he still wouldn't and wanted me to reassure him that I wasn't mad at him. It was honestly like being tortured. Eventually I had enough of his shit and blew up at him with all the anger and force of the recently bereaved. I don't remember what I said, but it was very, very mean and completely deserved. Never heard from him again. And guess what? As if that wasn't bad enough, we've got a similar story from the replies. I have a similar story. There were 2 students dating in high school. She said she wasn't ready to have sex yet. He said alright. Her father died suddenly. Then the boyfriend tried to pressure her into sex every time she was alone with him. She'd be crying, so he'd put an arm around her and kiss her, then stroke a bit, which could still be considered comforting, then try to go further. If she called him on it, he would say he was just trying to help. Imagine being a 15-year-old girl who just lost her father, being scolded for reading into the motives of someone who's just trying to help and be there for you in your time of grief. Eventually, he blew up at her for not getting over her dad's death fast enough and told her blankly he wanted sex. She said no, and he pitched a fit because even though she said no when they started dating, after all he did to help her, she owed him more. Then he dramatically broke up with her and told the story to everyone at school who would listen. The problem was, everyone thought he was in the wrong, and he was not happy about that either. The best part is when the story got back to his parents and they supposedly reamed him out. This is an especially shitty thing to do, of course. I don't think people really think the situation through when they're in it, or they'd see that they were being a tool. This guy I run into during nerdy events on campus. After a showing of Serenity put on by the Women's Center, he went around asking girls for hugs. This was after a 45-minute discussion on boundaries. He was at the Gender Equality Comic-Con dressed as Tony Stark and asking girls to hang on his arm because he was Tony Stark and Tony Stark has to be covered in smoking hot babes. And finally, he was in my weekend workshop about King Arthur, and upon seeing my Star Trek travel mug, followed me around the classroom while calling me Sexy Star Trek Mug. He sounds like the kind of guy who would take women's studies in college in an effort to get laid. Oh, my roommate is one of those. About a year ago, our friend had met a girl. She's into video games and anime and stuff. We hung out with her and friend at a bar. They were kind of holding hands, and he had his arm around her, pretty much like a date. And as soon as friend left, roommate tried to hit on her. She got visibly uncomfortable, and I took him outside and told him, "Hey man, that's not cool. She's interested in friend." He started screaming at me that obviously since she likes video games, that she should be his. He also screamed that friend was a shitty friend for stealing her from him. That was literally the first time we met her. Lucas Werner actually has a video called While You Were Busy Getting Everything I Deserve, detailing, among many other things, how some guy came over to where he was living and brought a girlfriend. Lucas got to thinking and decided to tell that guy to leave, but leave his girlfriend there so she could be his girlfriend instead. Unsurprisingly, they both left and he wasn't happy about it. That's just what that story reminds me of. A high school friend of mine asked me to sleep with him several times throughout our friendship, into when we were in college. He would alternate between trying to convince me he was in love with me and insisting he was not and that it wouldn't mean anything. I always turned him down and said I just wanted to be friends, etc. He would whine about how unfair it was that I wouldn't help him out, and the typical bullshit about how all girls only like assholes, so he could never get laid. I moved away and a few months later got a text from him saying my younger sister owed him money. My sister is an extremely emotionally unstable heroin addict, so I knew it couldn't be good. I learned that he had tried the same shit with her, even saying the exact same shit, and when she turned him down, he tried to coax her with cash. Unsurprisingly, she took the cash. When she didn't sleep with him in turn, he started hounding my family to get it back. Piece of shit. You know, for how much these guys never shut up about chivalry, they're certainly ready to throw out their dignity. I'm sure he never got the money or the dignity back either. A few days after my boyfriend and I had broken up, I got a message from an acquaintance I hadn't spoken to in years, telling me he's picking me up and we're going to dinner so I should dress nice. I try my best to politely decline, even though I really don't like the fact that he's more or less demanding I spend time with him. I tell him I'm not interested in dating right now because I'm still recovering from my breakup, which is the truth, and that I would prefer to spend some time alone. He sends me something like 40 texts that day saying I'm being rude and conceited, and that he was just trying to be nice and cheer me up, and how no wonder my boyfriend broke up with me. He says he doesn't care, he's still picking me up, and I'd better be ready on time. Finally, I've had enough and tell him to leave me alone because he's making me feel uncomfortable. If he had just started a conversation with me and asked if I wanted to hang out and catch up, I probably would have said yes. Anyone else remember back when Facebook notified everyone when someone's relationship status changed to single, and newly single women would just get dozens of messages from hopeful guys they know? Yeah, I can see why they changed that. Okay, let's read one post and then call it a day. I wish girls respected guys who work hard in the gym as much as they do tall, handsome guys. I've improved my squat a lot over the last 2 years and haven't lost my virginity. Meanwhile, the tall, hot guys in my class that are skinny and don't even lift are getting all the girls' attention. Maybe I should stop lifting altogether and just focus on making myself look taller and hotter through lifts in my shoes and changing my face somehow. Maybe that's what I need to make it in life. I would suggest stop defining yourself based on whether women find you attractive, but I know that can be hard in high school. Try to work out for yourself more than anyone else. Okay, just one more thing I wanted to say. The horngus of a dongfish is attached by a scungle to a kind of dill sack, the nut sack. No real reason to say that, I just like saying it. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you have something to say about Nice Guys, leave a comment. And if you're new here and liked it, consider subscribing. It all really helps me out. I also want to thank my generous patrons who helped me buy 4 Locos. I definitely welcome money because I'm a money-grubbing whore. A few people mentioned that last video was monetized for a bit. Yeah, I guess this channel's working now, so expect more content in the near future, and if you'd like to see a specific subreddit covered, especially if it's a story subreddit, let me know about it. The link to my Twitter and Discord is in the description if you have a story for me. Have a great day, everyone, and remember, if your parents told you to always buy used, it's probably not meant to refer to people.